Captain Ray Rosher. Thank you for joining us here on the Marlin Podcast. Thanks for having us here in your beautiful home down here in Miami, South Miami.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started here, I know for our audiences, Ray Rosher is pretty much a household name, but you've been a staple down here in Miami for 3+ decades, maybe longer, as a prominent fisherman. You fish around the world. By my research, 30+ tournament wins, and I'm sure that's probably shy. Tackle innovator, tackle manufacturer, Tommy Gifford, IGFA Tommy Gifford Award winner, which is, the highest honor for, captains and crew. So really an exceptional and kind of unparalleled career. So thank you for joining us. And
be my marketing manager.
That's right. That's right. That's right. RNR. But most recently, getting back to what has kind of brought you here, is that you're just back from 2 tournaments. You just fished the White Marlin Open, and you just finished fishing up the Mid-Atlantic. Got back last night, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us about those. How are those tournaments for
great.
you guys?
I have had the privilege of fishing with the Carmichael family on the Lights Out from Boston, and they're good. They're fun. Just a great family, and a bunch of friends that are part of that family that have fished together for decades, and it's my privilege to fish with them. They're great, and they're really, really good fishermen and very attentive and hard workers and all the things I love. So,
well, you guys had to deal with some weather up there, right? There are a couple of hurricanes going through. So what did you, with the days that you guys, what was it, White Marlin Open, they extended 1 day or 2 days? And then
2 days, White Marlin, and they extended Mid-Atlantic 1 day.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Fishing was good for you guys. I think in the White Marlin Open, you guys, or was it the Mid-Atlantic, you guys did pretty well and got into some of the money, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even remember. The Hook tournament the week or two before, we won that one in the release division. And then White Marlin, we did well. We were fishing this SFC, Sport Fishing Championship, in the Hook in the Mid-Atlantic. That was the 5th and 6th tournaments of a series. And couple weeks before that, they fished one in Oaks Bluff, and that Damon Sacco puts on, and won the release division in all 3 of those.
Nice.
Not the White Marlin, but the other 3 I mentioned. Yeah. So they've been on a roll. I'm just happy to be in the photograph.
I'm sure it's a little bit more. I'm sure it's a little bit more than that. But how do you like fishing up there? I know you're obviously you're a 3rd generation, Miami, South Florida native. This is where you've built your career down here.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But how is it fishing up in the Mid-Atlantic area and Northeast? And
it's so different because of the runs. The last day of the tournament, several of the days we ran over 100 miles in the morning. You're at the Cebu at 3 or so in the morning, 3:30, and I think White Marlin you can't be there before 4. But it takes a machine to get there and a team to execute. So like all your accolades sound great, but you haven't fished with me on a bad day. You're only looking at the highlight reel. Yeah. But we have our good days and our bad days, and you just have to be ready for the good days when they happen.
Right. So talk me through, what does that day look like on some of those long runs when you're fishing up there in the Northeast? So like what time are you getting going in the morning? What time are you having your coffee? You don't drink coffee, right?
No.
Not a coffee. We're your morning beverage of choice. What time is that happening? And you start getting ready on the boat. Like, what does that 24 hours look like?
About 18 hours of boat stuff and 6 hours of, on land, and eat and get some sleep. But, because of those hours, people sleep on the way out. The person who's the real Ironman is Tyler. He's the captain of the Lights Out. And, that I said to him several times, "Hey man, you need to take a break. I'll sit on autopilot or whatever." And it was funny. We talked on the last day of the last tournament coming in. I said, because I've fished, I don't know, half a dozen times up there over the years prior to this year, and almost all those captains, usually like at the end of the day, at the end of the fishing day, we got a 3-hour steam or 4-hour steam home. they'd take a nap. You know, myself or one of the other guys would run the boat, and that's just the way it was.
Right.
And I said that to Tyler. I said, don't you need I mean, he's been going since 2 a.m.
Right.
And sonar fishing means you got to pay attention. So I go up and, you know, hang with him and look at the sonar throughout the day and bounce from the cockpit to the bridge. But he's up there all day sonaring and, you know, running. And he said something interesting. He said, you know, if I let you run the boat or, you know, anybody, I'm just nervous they're going to hit a rope, hit a, you know, a log or whatever. So I really can't relax. He says, it's my job. And I just applaud that work ethic. Like, he's personally responsible for that boat. Yeah. From 3 a.m, 4 a.m till, you know, 8 p.m. when you get back. And that's an amazing effort and you know, amazing work ethic. Yeah. So there's I'm going to tell you, the captains up there and mates and the anglers, all of them are tough. That's the big difference. To answer your question, it's a different world, and it's an endurance test. That's why you hear so many overnight trips, because really the easier way is pick calm weather and just stay out and tuna fish, swordfish at night, and then you're already out there the next morning. Yeah. But again, that's another Ironman, you know.
I've never done a canyon trip. I really want to, man. Like, I think that sounds. I think I want to do the overnight ones, but I'd be down to fish a couple of tournaments at least to see what it's like. But then, you know, you talk about the work ethic and the endurance. But I mean, we were just talking before we jumped on the show here, and you're 62, right? Early 60s, and like, how the hell do you do it, man? Like, I mean, because I mean, this is
my brain hasn't caught up,
and because it's not only these tournaments, because I mean, you go. I mean, you got your tackle business, you've got the charter business down here in Miami. You're flying, you know, to fish these private boats for tournaments and so on and so forth. You hunt, you know, you got the whole family side too. Like, so are there any, I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, you are very active and you keep busy. You look great for 62.
Thanks.
How do you keep going? I mean, you don't drink coffee, so caffeine's not it. So like, what's the secret sauce? Is it?
My dad was always just a hard charger, and I just kind of, I guess, thought that was normal.
Gotcha.
And a lot of guys I fish with, Bill Harrison, another one, just, what's the right word? Just relentless, just go. And I mean, obviously, get some sleep, but more importantly, take care of yourself, eat well, you know, don't do dumb things.
Right.
Right? It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, easier said than done for a lot of guys. You know, I think it's very easy.
I don't know. Somehow I've avoided some craziness, but it's paid off. I think it helps you. You know, at the end of the day, being in the charter business, all these years, you watch people kind of rise and fall, and you realize without your health, you got nothing. You can have all the money in the world, and if you don't have health and good friends and family, you know, you're really not that rich.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what do you think the main thing is? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like, you know, the fun stuff, the drugs and alcohol can really lead to the demise of people in this industry, you know, like captains and crew, because of what we're just talking about.
You're gypsies, you know.
You're gypsies, you're traveling around, you got, you know, long hours, like you said, you're sleeping 4 to 5 hours a day, if that. Yeah. And then there's always, you know, it's the fun atmosphere, right? So there's always cocktails being poured and stuff like that. So it's, you know, that is even, I think, equally more impressive to have that tenure and longevity to not only be successful, but also to, you know, to get past some of those things that take, you know, quite a few good captains and mates down, you know.
I think I got to really give credit to the people who raised me. Yeah. Honestly. And I don't mean just my parents. My parents were great. Good work ethic, good humans, you know. And always impressed on my sister and I, you know, the truth comes out in the end. So always tell the truth. Right. So you start there. And then there's work ethic. My dad was a plumbing contractor. So at like 12, he'd paint the foundation fill in a house, and, you know, downhill is over there. Start digging. You know, so it's very fundamental, but those are the things that I think are the building blocks of success. And it's funny, sometimes I have young mates that, you know, a lot of my crew I've started with we've started together when they're in their mid-teens, and the first tournament you win, or whatever achievement happens, and they thank you, that's so great, thank you so much. And I tell them, it's not me, it's the people who raised you, whoever that is, right? Because you gotta understand, you gotta show up, you gotta be on time, you gotta be honest, you gotta prepare. Luck is where preparation meets opportunity. You gotta be ready for those moments. And I didn't teach those kids that.
Right.
That all came in the package that allowed them the ticket on the boat. Right? They got to have those skills, and then you just build on that with some pretty fundamental fishing, instruction. But they got to want it, and they got to have a foundation that was built by people before me. Right.
Well, speaking of like mates, and you were mentioning earlier the guys, some of the teams fishing up in the Northeast with those long runs. You said that they're hardy, they're tough, tough fishermen. Is there one? I mean, you fished, not only in the States, the main locations, whether it be South Florida, Carolinas, Northeast, Gulf. Are there any regions specifically, or even internationally, that stick out where some really good, consistently produce some really good fishermen? There's always that kind of like internal debate.
Well, if you ask me, some of the most memorable places I fished, it would be Bermuda and Australia and Africa. But when you talk about what creates a good fisherman, it's wide variety of opportunity and seasons in a place that has an extended fishing year. So in other words, you got to have a wide variety of species. South Florida and even up into the Carolinas, the Gulf. We live Southeast U.S. It's just an amazing place to learn fishing, offshore fishing, and even inshore, but especially offshore. You think South Florida doesn't have seasons. Well, we have like 8 or 10 fishing seasons, right, between different species that come and go. Even, of course, you got your sailfish, your mahi, tunas, but then you got cubera snappers, yellowtail snappers, kingfish, cobias used to, be pretty common under the rays. And, you have snook and tarpon on the beaches, and patch reefs in the spring, winter and spring. And, if you really dig into it, there's so many options that you can really hone your skills that cross over. So, one of the funniest moments I ever had fishing was, would have been probably like in the 80s. I was in Cat Cay with the Kelly family. We do, these group trips where we take clients over, and, I'd be yellowtailing while Peter Wright, and I could go down the list of, really accomplished tuna fishermen, Bill Harrison, the Steros is the, Merritts, they're all out there bluefin fishing. And I knew enough to know that that's where I wish I was at that moment when they were coming through, but I never, we had a mission. We were fishing customers, and we were anchored down, and we were yellowtail. And so one day, Alan Merritt and Bill Steros, I had a rare open day, and I was doing some stuff on the boat. They're like, "Hey, son, you want to come fishing with us? We're just going to go out here." Oh, okay. I'm thinking, wow, big game. Here we come. 2 of the legends of all legends. And we go anchor down, and we catch yellowtails. And I don't know that I've seen 2 guys more competitive catching yellowtails. Hand lining, by the way, not even a rod and reel.
Really?
Oh yeah. And Alan Merritt had all of his little nuances, and he was a funny, both of them were funny guys, but Alan especially. And every time he got one up on Bill Steros, he'd let him know it. Yeah, mine's bigger, I caught more, whatever, someday I'll teach you how, all those things. And then I learned it's really not the size of the fish. It's the opportunity to outthink something in the ocean, and so something is simple. The point is about all the different types of species. Something as simple as yellowtailing can teach you how to be a better bluefin tuna fisherman if you're chunking.
True.
how the bait sinks, right? Nothing's more critical of presentation than a yellowtail snapper. Well, you go up north and now you're chunking tunas. Trust me, your yellowtail senses would kick in, in certain fisheries.
Yeah.
And that's a good example of what I mean about Southeast U.S. There's so many species that a lot of what it takes to be good at one thing carries over. I mean, go back to beginnings in Australia, who founded that fishery were guys that, obviously there were Australian captains that had the opportunity, but guys like Peter Wright went over there with the knowledge of fishing bluefin tunas on 130 and brought heavy tackle knowledge to an area that needed it.
True.
And, that's when you realize how important it is to be diverse in your, approach to fishing. I don't get upset because I'm going yellowtailing now. I realize there's something to all of it.
I very much love yellowtailing. It's fun, a lot of fun. But I want to get off topic. A question I had for you on that. That diversity of species and that experience that you're talking about that you think builds a good fisherman. There's got to be a similar crossover there with the commercial to recreational guys too, right? Because you did commercial fishing for a little bit. There's pretty common, especially kind of like early, like guys your age, like that came through. Like I know Skip Smith did the commercial stuff. There's plenty of other guys that did.
Yeah, Bill Harrison before me.
Steve Lasley, another good one.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that. First of all, your experience with commercial, and what do you think? And I'm sure the toughness and the ruggedness has got to play in there too. It teaches you kind of work ethic as well. But like, what kind of fishing stuff, fishing knowledge or kind of stuff like that did you learn from your commercial time?
Yeah, like some of the best fishermen, Mark DeCabia, Bull Tolson, guys that, and there's a list is super long, that really were good at commercial fishing, became amazing. Steve Lasley's another one, became amazing sport fishermen. But what you learn, what commercial fishing teaches you is first of all, how to do math. You have to catch X to pay your expenses. Everything above X is profit, right?
Right.
And every fish that gets away is a reduction of profit. Once you understand that math, and you realize every knot failure, every pulled hook, maybe you didn't go the right direction. Maybe you weren't prepared with enough bait, maybe enough tackle. Maybe you didn't have enough baits rigged or whatever it is. That's what really separated the very successful from the average. And that applied to sport fishing is it's very similar. It's very, very much the same process in a tournament, right? I can tell you sad stories of one fish costing us $200,000, 187, 175. Not that I remember those things, but I could tell you the story on all of those, right? One fish. And look at 2 weeks ago, John Duffy won $3.9 million on one white marlin. Right. You pull that hook. Sorry.
Right.
And second place, Michael Jordan won a little over 400. So a 90% reduction in pay over 1 pound. So there you go. There's the math.
True.
That matters, right? And
very true. And you started when you were a teenager working with Bob Lewis down here in Miami. The story's been told. Bob Lewis, obviously, renowned for several things, but also the kite, kite fishing, kind of modern pioneer for that here in South Florida. But for you started off, growing up as a kid here in Miami, right? I want to talk about that a little bit, but, I think you grew up right around here, right? So take me through that. So when did you actually start fishing? Your parents, your father, your grandfather, I think got you into fishing, but tell me a little bit about that. But I want to talk, when did you start getting into that? When did that commercial period start for you? And then you obviously made the transition, but.
Yeah. So the funny thing is what really made me love fishing is catching bass as a little boy in the Everglades. And it was a byproduct of just kind of probably being a restless kid and wanting to, you know, something that was repetitive and, you know, gave you that excitement. And I would stand on the canal bank. My dad has a camp in the Everglades about 20 miles into the marsh, you know, into the bush.
Right.
And there's a canal system that ends right by his camp. So I could just walk to the canal, and it was just the best bass fishing you could ever imagine, you know. And if you put the lure right at the edge of the bank where there was a little spillway of water coming out of the swamp, it was automatic. And then how you work the lure, and, you know, how there were, again, that crossover of little things that you'd learn casting for bass. But most importantly, the love of fishing, right? It just became something I just couldn't wait to do. And then my grandfather introduced me to offshore. And you know, once you see big fish, then you kind of realize, wow, this is better. Maybe not as many, but boy, you know, so that combination, you know, the act of fishing I learned in the Glades, and then getting really fascinated with offshore fishing came from my grandfather. And back then, you know, you ate everything, sailfish included, you know, and so you become a little bit of a harvester, or at least that's what happened in my world. And then I got to meet Bob and Jimmy. My dad bowled with Bob, bowling alley, and Jimmy and I were bowling alley rats, hanging out together, flats fishing on the weekends, and then we became his mate. So Bill Harrison was dating Bob's daughter. So, you know, when Bill needed mates, you know, he'd nab Jimmy and I, and we spent the summer of 1980 in Key West commercial fishing. Okay. So I have to really credit Bill with flipping that switch to offshore commercial fishing, because he had a 34 Crusader with 2 hydraulic reels. Okay.
And how old were you at this time?
17.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was, man, can you imagine going with a guy like Bill, who's, I mean, in my opinion, he's one of the best fishermen I've ever fished with. And he did smart things. Like he created a point system for 2 young boys to create an Alan Merritt, Bill Steros competition every day. 1 point for a rosefish, 2 points for a tile, and 4 points for a grouper. So we were having at it every day. And whoever won didn't have to ice the fish in the hold and boots getting filled up with ice and gut, and, you know. So Bill was very wise to create a competition. And then he had 2 boys that just wanted to outdo each other every day. And that's, again, the building blocks. And I'm so thankful for that time with Bill. And then, of course, in later years, he introduced me to the world. You know, I went to Africa with him and St. Thomas many times.
Right.
And fished with Ralph Christensen on the Pescador a bunch of times. He ran Ralph's boat in the summers during the full moons. And, man, it was great.
And so were you in Block Island, or not Block Island? What is that?
Red Hook and St. Thomas?
No, in Key West. What is that? Block Island?
Oh, yeah.
Stock Island. Stock
Island.
Yeah. Was that where you guys were based out of?
Yeah, we did. It was called Oceanside Marina at the time. Now it's different.
Gotcha.
Marina. But, yeah, you had a big, you know, commercial center there. You'd pull your boat up and they'd blast a few 1,000 pounds of ice in a chipper. And, you know, it was a world I had never seen. The closest I'd ever come as a kid on the Juneau Pier catching bait for Pete Schultz, you know, when I was, you know, 10, 12 years old, 13 years old, just, you know, again, that's probably where it really started with the math, right? $1 a dozen for pilchards and 25 cents a croaker. And they had little live tanks at the front. Guys would pull their boats in and buy bait from the pier. And so it just kept me occupied. I don't know. I know that there's less room for commercial fishing today because of the number of boats and technology and fish stocks and so on. But I have to say, I really loved growing up at a time where you could just push to catch as much as you could. It was I understand more than ever the need for conservation, but when I was a kid, there was a lot less focus on that and a lot more focus on how many you can catch, how fast.
Right.
And then the only thing that happened differently in later years was the presence of sushi bars. So now quality became important, you know, how to brine your fish, bleed them. And so that was kind of the evolution for me of how to make more money off less fish.
Yeah. I don't know if you agree with me about this, but I have this kind of theory. I don't think, it's anything profound or unique to me, but I feel like it takes me, or it took me both with, like hunting and fishing. I feel like you have to, this is going to sound bad, almost when you're young or when you're first getting into it, like experience like it's going to sound bad, the senseless killing, or you kill things, like you kill things more than you would. And then you have to go through that period of time to truly appreciate, for me, to truly appreciate and then come full circle and be like, you know what? Like
a friend of mine identified it almost perfectly. His name's Larry Rankin. He was my pro staff boss at Ray Marine, and he's a real outdoorsman and fishing and hunting. And he named it. It was 5 things. I probably get it wrong, but it's exactly what you said. Step 1, it's just this new world,
right?
And it's just full attack mode, right? And my dad had a great solution. You eat everything you shoot. I ate rattlesnake. I ate armadillo. I ate birds of various types. And pretty soon, I didn't want to shoot as much. It was squirrel for me. Yeah, squirrels, rabbits, ate all that. And then you kind of learn, you shift from that, like I said, new world, it's all new. This is exciting. This is fun. And then you just start applying some logic and some discipline. Right. And the next thing you know, you are becoming more selective, and then maybe you start bow hunting or fly fishing, and pretty soon
handicapping yourself a little bit,
right? And then pretty soon you become the teacher. So now, like step 4 is you become this person that takes joy not necessarily in the harvest yourself, but now you're more of a mentor, and then in the end, you just sit on the porch and talk about it.
That's right. Yeah. That makes sense. That's a good kind of timeline on how that works. Because, and it's like
it's a progression.
And then I feel like you don't get to that level of appreciation without having to kind of, cut your teeth doing some.
But I do think, just to put it in perspective, that step 1 is important. Because like I say to mates that are getting their captain's license, once you step on the bridge, you're no longer the student. You better have your act together to be a teacher.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing in what you're talking about. You better know how to harvest and how to catch. And then slowly you fine-tune those skills through this journey that has rewards on every step.
Yeah. Well, how did you sound like you liked it, but that commercial aspect, walk me through real quick, like a day, or like would you do multiple days out at sea when you would do something like that? Or would you go out and do a drift not a drift, but like do a set and collect and come back?
So I never got into the heavy duty commercial, like long lining. I actually wished I would have. I'm still fascinated by it, but
I am too.
I've never buoy fished. I've never long lined. Bill did all that. So I learned a lot from him just talking about it. But almost everything I've done is day trips. And, I did pretty much all the species you would imagine when I was younger. A lot of commercial dolphin trips, bottom fishing trips. I amberjack fished for one whole season. Our best day, I think, of whole fish was like 5,000 pounds on Bill's boat, hydraulic reels. And I'll mention something. It sounds a little bad, but it took me through that process that you're talking about. That day that we caught 5,000 pounds, I realized that the Isla Morada hump's 290 feet. So you would put, 40 feet of chain and like 310 feet of rope. So, you'd catch the grapple on the edge. But if you think about it, if this is the hump and you got a grapple here, the boat's here and you're catching jack. Now remember, there was a giant area of jacks, but you were catching all these 30, 40 pounders. And yet when I would drift, when I wasn't anchored, I'd get bigger ones. So it hit me. The females are spraying their eggs up front. The males are in the back, fertilizing. So I took 1,200 feet of anchor rope and went and anchored in 700 feet of water with a giant anchor. And we were the only boat up here, and that's how we caught 5,000 pounds.
Interesting.
And I'm approximate based on what we had for cord weight, because we used to gut them and head them. And caught one of the 300-pound jacks that I caught in my life that day, and had about 10 5-gallon buckets of eggs.
10.
So, yeah, like I said, it sounds a little bad.
Right.
But it shaped me. It taught me something. We used to sell those eggs for $2.50 a pound, and a bucket was about 40 pounds.
What would they use the eggs for?
Here
Like
in Miami, that they cook they huevos. They cook the fish eggs, fry them like dolphin roe.
True.
You've heard of eating dolphin roe?
Yeah.
Well, the amberjack roe were just big sacks, And so a 40-pound bucket was $100. I had 10 buckets. I had $1,000 worth of eggs. But then I laid there in bed at night, and I thought that night, I thought, how many amberjacks were in those buckets? And so you learn,
right.
It's just a reality, right? This is the they call it like the byproduct of war, right? There's going to be casualties.
Yeah.
But it did change me because I really thought in that season I leased Bill's Crusader, and Ed Cattell and I did that season amberjack fishing for a few months in the summer and spring and summer, and we got tagged. So I want to say 9 places, and I'll just give you the rough, like Panama City, somewhere off Naples, Key West, all the way up to Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's another thing I thought about later. So those fish all migrated to the island. We're on a hump, and we pulled tags out of 9 fish from 9 places.
That's pretty interesting.
We're disrupting
the spawning or something. Yeah.
And I mean, listen, I'm the first one to support commercial fishing. I'm not anti-commercial fishing. But I am saying you got to be mindful of how to do it sustainably. That's a big word,
Yeah.
And I never did it again after that. Not that I'm there's plenty of jacks in other areas, but in our area, I just think it's not sustainable here. There's too many people. Now, maybe if you're in, Destin or Naples or Pulley Ridge or, like you're somewhere far away and there's a big stock of them, you're probably not going to put a dent in them if you took a few thousand pounds.
Right.
But here, those days are gone. So there's the kind of the sad part for me is that it was a window in time. I'm very privileged to have enjoyed it and learned a lot, dolphin fishing, how to be ready for big poundage on big days. It's funny nowadays, you catch 20 dolphin and it's like this, it's a really big deal. In the old days, I remember one dolphin season, we never caught less than 50 dolphin through October 22nd.
On a day trip.
Day trips. We never, I remember one year telling Ed, that's the first day we caught less than 50. Now remember, there was no size limit. So we'd keep an 18-incher, if they were bleeding, we'd keep them. And, down to a certain, 16, 17 inches. And I know that sounds super small, but back then it was kind of accepted, right? Now it's 20 inches and that's great. But I'm just telling the truth. The 50 weren't all 10 pounders. They were small fish. But the point is there were fewer boats and a lot more fish, and catching 50 dolphin a day was commonplace. And it made captains and mates and anglers better because of the volume. It's just not possible today. And I fully accept the 10 or 20 dolphin a day. That's a good day.
Right.
But it has changed. It's different. That's the only part that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Got to tune your brain to a different, mindset, right? Those days are in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sit here and sound like I'm old and like, I remember the days when, because I'm not. But fishing down in South Florida for the past 15, 16 years, I feel like I've seen a difference in the dolphin fishing.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's to catch a 10-pound fish is kind of an exciting thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a 20-pounder. I mean, holy cow. I mean,
we won a tournament a month or so ago with a 15-pounder. Like when we hooked that thing, I told everybody, wind it all in. We're going for it. It was like we had a blue marlin on.
So what, my point is this is like, okay, so the dolphin fishing, is one of them. But what other fish? I mean, you fish South Florida consistently for what, 30 plus, 40 years now, probably?
Yeah,
40
since
plus?
79 is when I started.
Okay, so what other, aside from dolphin, is it across the board kind of, the fishing has kind of declined in your opinion? Or are there some fisheries that have kind of maintained or even, increased? Because I don't want to paint like this bad picture, like, oh, the fishing's terrible. I just, you hear that a lot from, people that are like, oh, you should have been here when I was growing up. But have you seen anything, I guess, that's contrary to that? Have there been any success stories? Maybe swordfish, I guess. You've seen the kind of rebound of that.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I mean, 2 days ago, we caught 18 white marlin in the mid-Atlantic. We had 3 doubles, I think, 2 triples, and a quad. That's the best white marlin fishing I've experienced. I know that's not, most of the guys up there have done better. I think the boat I was on caught 47 on an overnighter, 39 one day a month ago. So there are those fisheries that are doing well.
Right.
I would say the sail fishing has held pretty steady, if not better. I remember a Miami billfish tournament where 3 fish won the tournament out of 100 boats in 2.5 days.
Wow.
3 fish. Now, that was just a bad year, probably poor conditions,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember when. But that was back also before circle hooks were really implemented, and a lot more sailfish were harvested intentionally. Like, get the gaff out, we're going to smoke this one.
Right.
It was pretty normal to do that. And I do believe that circle hooks have changed the survival rate because, we fished with J hooks originally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, a few things have gotten better and a few things have gotten worse.
Yeah.
I think fish. So the biggest single change is technology, braided line, GPS, Seymour mapping. There's so many things that make the average guy better.
Mm-hmm.
Fast boats, outboard, that can travel fast, multiple outboards. YouTube, Marlin Magazine, so many things that have educated people. Just this, I guess you call it a wave of knowledge and equipment has improved the average fisherman so much that if you talk about regions with high populations, and especially South Florida with a small reef system, very vulnerable to pressure because you don't have enough. You're not in Key West, where you got hundreds of miles of reef to fish.
True.
Or the Carolinas, where anywhere up in the Mid-Atlantic, where you've got just endless miles of bottom to fish. So that's the Gulf of Mexico. Anywhere you've got big areas of flat bottom, you probably can still see great bottom fishing and maybe even pelagics.
Right.
But South Florida, it's
concentrated,
very concentrated effort, and a lot of knowledge, a lot of technology is improved. So
gotcha. So I would say you're famous for a lot of things in our industry, but your charter operation, Miss Britt, that you've built here in Miami, Coconut Grove, before that you ran a boat, Tropicat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for the Kellys,
for the Kelly tractor, Caterpillar.
Yep.
Well, I guess let me just back up for a second. Walk me through the start of Miss Britt and what it started out as in terms of like boats and operation, and kind of bring me to where you're at now, because I know that's been a long period of time and you've built that quite a bit. So, you've done your commercial, you've worked for Kelly tractor on the Tropicat, and you talk about that a little bit, but then how do you get to the Miss Britt? That's like, when people think of Ray Rosher, that's, one of the first things that comes to mind.
Well, the Kellys, I'm hugely indebted to them because they gave a kid a chance who knew nothing. And, we all started there, right? And they patiently waded through my mishaps and let me learn along the way. And I had 20 years with them, and they treated me great. And just the only reason I left was to take care of my family. I had some family things happen that became larger, and I just had to take care of my daughter, and that's how the name became Miss Britt. She was the reason for that.
And what was the first boat for the operation? The Miss Britt, but what type of vessel? Yeah,
it's a 33 like Grand Slam. Well, it was a Bobby Sherwood hull that Bobby Gernhauser owned the mold for, and Lou Rambo built. And I built with him in Riviera Beach, and it was just a good boat to put a single cat in, and the boat has served me really well. I've had it, since '99, and it's a workhorse. It's won a bunch of tournaments and caught a lot of fish. We've had a lot of fun on it. So it's just kind of funny how life sometimes throws you curveballs and it turns out great. You know, I got to be super close with my daughter and got to embark on a journey that introduced me to so many people and traveled so many places because of those relationships. That it's been a great run.
Yeah, so I'm sure, you know, you talk about a professional captain like yourself, you know, in this day and age, I feel like most of the projected, like the career path is to, you know, work on, eventually to try to get on a private boat, right? And, you know, fish on a...
Get off the slow boat, get on a fast boat.
Yeah, but you kind of took a different approach to it, right? So you have, you know, built this foundation, because Miss Britt, now you have 3 or 4 boats.
Well, I've got 3 technically, but one's in the yard. I'm working on it.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, when everything's up and running, you're fishing 4 boats down here. In
three primarily, 2 right now because I got 1.
Okay, gotcha. So 3 boats, and you know, charter operation here in South Florida. But I mean, probably from the time you started this charter operation, you've been getting invitations, I would imagine, with people that you fished with or people that want you to run tournaments to come, you know, hey, you know, we want you to come run this boat for us, run this private boat, but you've kept with the business. Like, explain that to me. Like, why, what's kept you grounded in the Miss Britt, in that operation?
Well, fortunately, I've met a few people along the ways, the Shufflebargers and Kit Toomey, and several people that have allowed me to fish with them kind of part-time and then still run my charter business. So, you know, Bill Harrison did the same thing years before. I didn't invent it.
Well, what do you,
did. So I kind of saw his world, and he'd keep his commercial boat home, the Crusader.
Right.
And then he'd go fish with Ralph Christensen or the Belchers or, you know, a variety of people. And that's a cool arrangement if you can pull it off, right? Have a home base and then go travel for this tournament or that, you know, event, whatever. You know, got to go to Bermuda a bunch of times and with Scott on the Wheeze and the Keys, you know, just those are that's the icing on the cake.
So do you think your primary gig as a charter operator, right, where you're going out and you have to, I'm just trying to connect these dots here like we were talking about earlier as far as the diversity of species, right? As a charter captain, you have to be flexible based on what's going. You're trying to put fish in the boat,
right.
keep people tight on fish, your clients. So do you think that gives you an advantage as like when you go and fish these tournaments or over, say, a captain that maybe just fishes one owner or private boat and they just strictly go after, you know, maybe billfish or something like that solely. Do you feel like your experience running charters has given you any sort of advantages or anything like that, you know? Versus
It'll teach you how to clean a toilet, unplug one, fix an engine, rebuild a reel. You know, there's so many little peripheral things that you need to not just know how to do, but be willing to do. And when you have that attitude, you can get on pretty much any boat and go places. And the fishing is sometimes not the most challenging part.
Right.
You know, again, charter fishing teaches you how to navigate relationships, customers, crew, and that's a big part of it too. Show up and get along. You know, what do they say? Most things you need to know in life you learn by kindergarten. Learn how to get along.
True.
Clean up after yourself.
Well, I know you probably can't name all these. I don't want to like pinpoint you down, you know, because I'm sure you don't want to leave people out. But any let's put it this way: any specific trips that have come, like obviously your home base here in Miami. You just came back from the Mid-Atlantic fishing White Marlin Open, but you've done. You know, there's been more invitations to people that you've met or experiences, even outside of fishing. Like we're in your house here, and when you walk in the front door, I mean, there's right over my left shoulder here, there's a kudu that your son shot right on a trip to, was it Tanzania or Africa? Or, and so you guys, which is, you know, you went hunting with someone that you met fishing. So
actually his is bigger than mine. That's mine. But I kind of grew up enjoying cook and catch or harvest and cook, you know, I mean, catch and cook or harvest and cook, you know, that was just my life with my dad. And so that's one of the coolest parts of the journey has been going to places like Africa and different, wherever, you know, fishing all over that you get to not only see cool stuff, but, you know, I like fresh fish and game, and, you know, that's just been not to mention the people that are engaged in that are generally better than average people. Right. So
I agree with that. Yeah.
you know, it's just, I love driving cross country and getting out in the Midwest and pulling into a diner and just, or the people that I fished with that live there and, you know, just hanging out with them. It doesn't get much better.
Speaking of hunting, I know you're about to head west here in a few days or whatever, and you hunt frequently throughout, probably every year you've been a hunter most of your life. What, and we talked about this before the podcast, but I want to revisit it. What are some of the crossovers that you've seen or that you've identified in hunting and fishing? You know, if there's any main points that you've been able to take from the 40 plus years or whatever that you've had on the water, and when you're sitting there and you're looking at draws or whatever in the Midwest, like what are some things that you've seen? You know, I think I've heard you talk about them, but you know,
I mean,
pinch points.
The funny thing is, it's so similar, and I mean, I can't even begin to name all the people I know that are great fishermen that are good hunters.
There's a lot, yeah.
And you know, I think it's a little bit change of scenery, right? It's just the same process, but with a different background. So if I were a hunting guide year round, I couldn't wait to go fishing, right? It's the same thing in reverse. And I think that's what it is for a lot of fishermen. And then they become just, talented at doing the same thing in a different setting. You know, let's just look at sight fishing, sailfish, bonefish, you know, so many things, so many species that applies to. It's hunting. You know, you're seeing maybe it's an edge of a flat or the edge of a water change, you know, a current change or water color change. All those edges create a little higher density, and then you got to learn the behavior of the fish or the animal, and then the best way to execute your goal, whatever it is, you know, harvesting something or catching and release, whatever it is. Those are all the ingredients that you kind of share, whether you're hunting or fishing, and you know, it's all tomato. It's all the same stuff. It's just different places.
Yeah. Well, is there a specific place that you've hunted that you like more than another? And
so when I was young,
a specific animal.
My problem is I just need to be 30 because I haven't gone all the places I want to go. When I was young, I wanted to. My mom took me to China when I was 18 with my couple cousins, and my aunt was a missionary, and she got access in 1980. So I mean, it was pretty new for Westerners to be there, and it changed me because I spent a few weeks going through the countryside and just seeing the other side of life, and beautiful place. But when I came home, I could have kissed the ground because at 18 years old, you think that the rest of the world's just like your microcosm, and it's not. It was so good. My aunt knew that the boys needed to go see that at 18. My three of us, you know. And when I came back into Hong Kong, I went straight to Pizza Hut and ate a whole pizza. And from that day on, I thought, I want to see this country.
Right.
I'd seen enough of it to know how special and beautiful the United States were. But I made a goal that I want to hunt or fish all 50 states. And I'm at 28. And I got a lot more I want to do. But the problem is I keep falling in love with people and places. I've been to Texas 20 times, Kansas 15 years, New Jersey probably 12 years. You know, just I'd get in with a group of friends that I met fishing typically, and it's so great. I just can't stop going. Right. And I have to almost force myself to go to a new state every year, you know, and that's the beautiful thing about this country we live in. It is amazing, and it's so different when you travel around. So much beauty. And back to the people, you know, most of the people from the more rural settings are just amazing people that work hard and share this passion for hunting or fishing. You know, they're in that reverse, right? They're they're in the woods all year and they can't wait to come to the ocean. So when I can share my world with them, they do the same in reverse. And that's just the greatest gift.
Yeah, I agree with you on exploring the U.S. more. I mean, there is so much stuff. I mean, I just flew through on the way back from Hawaii. I didn't even leave the airport, but I flew through Seattle, and just the flight in, the window seat, just to see the natural beauty up in that. I'd never been to that area of the country before, like the Pacific Northwest, and I'm like, I've got to come back here. This place looks awesome. So yeah, I agree with you there. But man, that trip to China, when you say you're 18, that had been talk about eye-opening, man. That was probably. Oof. I could imagine that being something that would be transformative,
Oh yeah.
And
I was walking down the street in Quayle, and I go, man, a pet shop. This is amazing. Cats and dogs, and all of a sudden, wait, there's chickens dead, goats dead. I realize I'm in a meat market, and they keep a lot of their meat alive.
Yeah.
So I said to the lady, "We've been eating cats and dogs." She goes, "Oh yeah." That changes you. You realize it's just protein. And I know that sounds horrible.
For sure.
I love cats and dogs, but not necessarily cooked.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I experienced it.
And I thought it was bad when I was in Chinatown in San Francisco. You walk in some of these markets, and they would have like largemouth bass and redfish, red drum in tanks that they're going to eat. And I was like, man, this is not right. You have bass in tanks here. What's this all about?
If you name them ahead of time, it's really rough.
So we talked a good bit about your fishing and like your fishing career, obviously with Tropicat, Miss Britt. But there's a whole nother component to your life and your work story, and that's your tackle business, RNR Tackle. When did that officially launch? When did you start that company?
It was early 2000s, like 2001, 2002. I'd have to go back and look, but Rob Hammer, an old high school buddy of mine, came to me with the kind of a business idea. He had a manufacturer source for sabikis, and he said, if you could help me create the products and test them, and I'll handle the marketing and sales. That was just the rough game plan, and
right.
We did it for a few years, and then ended up buying him out. And his other businesses got busier, so he was kind of looking for an exit, and it worked out. And really, for me, I've said it before, my life's a little bit like Forrest Gump. I don't even quite know what's happening around me, but things kind of work out, and I end up in good places kind of accidentally. That's what the tackle business has been for me. It started out as a way that I needed sabikis on my charter boat, and then we started building bait pens, and it just dehookers, and it just kind of grew from there. And it became a benefit to my charter business, because you can imagine the real cost of manufacturing is much lower than retail cost.
Yeah.
And so it was just a process that helped my charter business be more profitable. I didn't really make much money from tackle for the longest time. And it was funny. I went to China again in I can't remember what year, maybe about 10 years ago, with Dick Henry he was the founder of Big Rocks, or Henry's Tackle. And he owned Penn Tackle at one time. And at dinner one night, he asked me, "When do you make money in the charter business?" It was just he and I sitting at the table. And we were there for a tackle show. He took me along. And I said, "Well, I guess when I sell tackle." No, he said, "When do you make money in the charter business?" I said, "I guess when we take people fishing." He goes, "And when do you make money in the tackle business?" I thought about it again. This was kind of, internet was kicking in, and online sales. And I said, I guess you can make money, 24 hours a day. He goes, "Exactly. Remember that. You're not getting any younger." And it was just a short little, 1 minute conversation.
Right.
And it stuck with me. And I realized I need to pay attention to that, because it's scalable. Not that the charter business isn't scalable. You can scale with more boats. And fortunately, in South Florida, we fish 12 months a year. A lot of places you don't. But the bottom line is, I started paying attention to patentable things, achieving a few patents, and trying to trademark things, and try to build the business as more of a brand and take it a little more serious. So that's been helpful.
Yeah. So before you officially formed the company, you strike me as the kind of guy that is been tinkering with this.
Yeah.
You're already building this stuff, right? Like you were already making your own stuff. And so basically it was just a matter of connecting the dots. You said this guy that you knew came, Hammer, Rob Hammer came in so you already had some of these product designs in the works at that point, right? Yeah, that's to me is something that I feel like in these conversations I've had over the years with people that have been usually successful captains. I feel like a common denominator is like most of, if not all of them, are tinkerers. They're always fine tuning something, seeing something like, maybe just do this or try this a little bit differently. And, so it doesn't surprise me that. So what'd you guys start off with? I know D-hookers has been a big thing, the sabikis, the bait pens. Yeah. Because, bait is, that's kind of your reputation, like you're renowned for your bait handling. And, we don't have to get into all that because I know you've done countless seminars and everything about how to manage bait and handle bait properly. I just saw you at ICAST a couple months ago, and now, you guys are coming out with, you have line of lures, you have a bunch of different stuff. So like what did you start with? What were some of your some of your best selling products?
Yeah, it all started in the live bait field, and then it grew slowly into more terminal tackle and kite related stuff. And I built a couple clips, outrigger clips. After going to Australia with Peter Wright in 2007, we're fishing giant baits and the clips aren't holding the baits. So, I guess you could say failure is your greatest teacher. And that's all you do is kind of navigate through your fishing day and say, wow, this needs to be better. That's all it is. It's really nothing. I certainly haven't cured cancer, but we are absolutely trying to make tackle better and, come up with a few little things. I'm a big fan of not copying anybody. I'm not a Me Too thing. I'm gonna copy this because it works, right? Yeah. I'd rather figure out a way to make a product better or just create something altogether new. And honestly, I have to be thankful to the charter business for all of that and let's not forget the mates and the captains that you work with who go, hey, this stinks. We got to fix this.
Right.
And they're my pro staff. They're the guys
the guinea pigs.
Testing. Yeah, I was trying to think of the right word, but they're the poor guys that have to deal with the prototypes.
Yeah.
Like the outrigger clips and the kite clips, we took 6 or 7 different improvements to get it where it's really marketable.
Yeah. Well, it takes a certain person to, a lot of people can say, oh, this kite or this clip sucks, and just complain about it, but to actually put the time in to make a tweak, it's, not everyone does that. So I think that's something to be commendable.
Got to thank my old shop teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
We need more shop classes.
I agree with you. We were talking about this beforehand. I think one of the most important or impressive things to me, and it's because I don't, necessarily have this skill set. The most impressive thing about people like yourself, top captains, not only the tinkerers, but I feel like they can fix anything. I feel like that's a key component to a good captain. And that's not even on a sport fishing boat, but any kind of vessel. Yeah. It's like you have to be able to fix, and the vehicle, the vessel that you're on. And I personally find that incredibly impressive. That again, a skill set that I think it ended after I did my 2-cycle Briggs and Stratton lawnmower engine in high school, but I don't even know if they do that anymore. Shop class, I hope they do, but at least for a foundation.
My kids just got out of high school and they just almost nothing, and I think that's a mistake, and I don't know, I don't know why, but it is hugely beneficial to learn how things are made, and I got to really give my dad credit. He built airboats and swamp buggies, and I was just as much involved in it as I could be at that age, but that teaches you a mindset that, it's not that complicated. Don't be afraid of it.
Right. I think that's a lot of it is fear. It's like if you just, you're like, I just don't know how to do that. But if you just have enough courage to dive in and take it apart, and then you're kind of like, all right, well, I got to put it back together now. You're not left with a choice. So
one of the coolest things I saw my dad do, we were in the Everglades at camp, and he wanted to put a trailer hitch on front of a pipe bumper. And he goes, I want to show you something. And he had welding rods, steel arc welding rods. He took a 12-volt car battery. He hooked up the jumper cables, and he put the ground on the bumper, and he took the positive lead and put it on that welding rod, and he welded steel with a welding rod. He welded a steel bumper in the Everglades with a 12-volt car battery. And that's just an example of how, what's the right word, much of a survivor that generation was. Like they knew tricks. I mean, I could go on and on, just how to get an engine running, how to fix this, how to fix that. And that is something I have to be real. I got to give my dad a lot of credit.
Right.
Because that's where it all comes from. And then, the rest is just fine tuning your knowledge, how to do things.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier, you said, when you were fishing in Australia with Peter Wright, I know, we've talked about this before off the podcast, you and Peter, you were close with him when Peter got inducted to the IGFA Hall of Fame. He was still working on the Sea Baby 4, correct?
That's right.
In Australia. And he asked you to run the boat for him while he was over in the States doing his getting his
He was kind of
induction.
angry about the timing. I think the IGFA told him you'd be the first living inductee that doesn't show up.
I mean, it would be
That's what he told me.
I mean, that's a good excuse. Like, hey, I'm fishing. I can't be there.
Well, he waits all year for his 3 or 4 months in Australia.
Right.
He leased the boat. See, I didn't know how all that worked, but it was kind of critical for him to make the most, to make his money back on leasing the boat from Rod, the owner. And but I had a really great friend, Don Wall, that chartered me and over the years on my boats, and Don wanted to go, and we went, and it was it was just amazing, just so cool. And I got to spend a week with Peter in the tower, so he took me up the ribbons and gave me the crash course, and we just had an amazing time.
So something to me that I always aspire to be, and this connects here, whether it's hunting or fishing, I always want to be. I don't want to be I'd like to be a specialist in some of it, but I want to be like, oh, you can drop me off in a couple different places, and like I may not be a number one at it, but I'm gonna either catch I'm gonna catch some fish.
Yeah, you're gonna.
I'll
survive.
figure it out, or I'm gonna shoot a deer or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
and like I feel like that is like an important component to it. So like, what's your mindset when you're going? Not only there, right? So you're going to Australia for the first time, or if you're going to, I think you fished Cape Verde, a couple other places. Like, you're coming out of your wheelhouse here. What's your mindset? Like, how do you prepare for a trip like that when you're going to someplace new? Do you do something differently? Are you just research, or like just wing it? And when you get there, you figure out like what's
the Forrest Gump approach? Just bring a whole bunch of tackle and be ready for anything.
Right.
The greatest example of that was the IGFA Rolex Championship in Cabo.
Oh, yeah.
I had never caught a striped marlin, and so brought everything: kite fishing stuff, live bait casting. Had a 8-foot spinner 2-piece made so you could cast further than the next guy. And back then they wouldn't let you use braid, but it was all 30-pound mono. But anyways, you bring lures, brought deboners, and we just kind of figured it out. So.
And was that the first time you had ever fished Cabo? First time going down there? Interesting. And you won that twice, right?
Yeah, 05 and 06. And then 07, by then, the cat was out of the bag. And I think we came in 12th on the third year. It was over. And we didn't, and I'm not saying we were the first one to ever deadbait there, but when I got there, none of the crews I fished with, I don't think had ever seen, I didn't bring enough ballyhoo. I brought like 50 ballyhoo the first time, and we burned some of them up pre-fishing. Because, we tried lures first one day, pre-fishing, and then we did a bunch of live bait casting one day. And then the third day, I put out a few ballyhoo, and you'd see these fish basking and wrap around them, and little mylar dredge. Again, it was Survivor. You're on a different boat every day, so you couldn't be very elaborate. But the dead baiting rose to the top. So I went to Peter, who was the head guy there, and kind of the rules guy. And once I saw the ballyhoo work, now I went around to the tackle shops, Minerva's and whatever. Nobody had any ballyhoo. Nobody. There was, I think I saw one spinning rod. And it was just, everybody trolled conventional. Right. So all I could think of was, what can I do for bait? And it hit me. You go to the receivers and buy the mackerel, the tinker mackerel, and caballitos, which are like a big goggle eye.
Right.
And it hit me. I could probably make a mackerel swim if I deboned it. And so I went to Peter and said, I know we're only allowed 10 baits a day by tournament rules, live baits, but is there anything that would stop me from using these baits dead? Like if a bait dies, can I use it? And can I even buy some bait and kill it? He goes, as long as you don't have more than 10 live baits a day, we're good. So I went and bought like 200 mackerel and brined them, slushed them, and then got in the hotel shower because it was a mess, right? Where else am I going to work?
Right.
And we deboned a mackerel for hours and rigged them up, floss marks on their head. I did find in one of the tackle shops cast net leads. So they're long, skinny, and I could get them to fit up in the gills of the mackerel. And we made swimmers, and that's how we won. And again, it wasn't, I didn't invent anything.
Right.
It goes back to the creative, how do you find a need and fill it? That's business 101.
Right. Well, what has been the most in location-wise place that you've fished that has been the most impressive to you? What place, is it the reef? I mean, haven't been to the reef yet, but I got to think that's got to kind of have some strong, especially being there with Peter for a week, it's got to be him.
I even said to Peter when I was in the tower, I said, man, I wish I had a camera rolling because the stories, I've noticed a lot of captains like Buddy Carey. I fished with him when I was in my 20s. He was a captain here in Miami for 55 years and he died in 2000. But, man, the stories, you'd be going down the reef and it was just the location creates the next story. You go a little further and you'd be by that lighthouse. Go a little further and you'd be by, some wreck or whatever. Like fishing with Buddy one day, we go by a patch reef. And I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere down off Soldier's Key. And there's no landmarks that close. I mean, there's distant ones, and this is, before GPS. And he's in mid-sentence. He goes, yeah, that rock right there, this time of year, we usually get a gag or a black. And he goes on with his story. And, a minute and a half later, when the wire lines went by it, we get one on, and the mate runs over to the other rod, and like Buddy slows down, so wind the other rod, keep it moving, boom, a black and a gag. And I just, it's kind of like that Crocodile Dundee moment where you're just going, how does he know that?
Right.
And Peter was a lot like that too, going up the reef. Just the next reef created several stories, and I just wish I could remember it all. But that was his 42nd season, and he made it 44. So I knew I was in rare company.
That's crazy. 44 seasons fishing the reef.
Here's the better number. I want to say, and I could be off by a little bit, but the last I heard, he weighed 77 granders. Peter Bristow weighed 55. I filmed a TV show with both of them, and I asked him those days, how many do you think you released that were over the mark? Because remember, in the early years, killing them was, applauded, right?
Right.
And then in later years, conservation kicked in, and so, many times they'd catch them and we're letting them go. They both gave me the exact same answer, which is double. So that would mean Peter Wright, 77 times 3 would be a 200, and Peter Bristow would be 150 ballpark. And man, nothing I've done comes even close to what those guys have done and seen, period. Those guys lived at a rare time, a little before my time, when opportunity met technology and knowledge and experience, and those guys had it. And I mean, I may be leaving somebody out. There may be somebody in between that 55 and 77, but Peter Bristow, ironically, is still fishing in Madeira.
That's right.
In his 80s. Yep. And that's somebody that I would really encourage you to talk to. He's just a wealth of knowledge and funny dude with a million stories. Bill Harrison's another. So those are the guys that saw it and are still in good shape and can tell you stories.
Well, you heard that, Michelle. We got to go to Madeira.
That's it. Can I go? Can I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in.
You're in. I was going to say something about the thing with, Peter Bristow and Peter Wright, killing 77 granders and everything like that. And you talk about how that's changed, like how it used to be applauded and like,
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I feel like we're kind of in the middle of one of these paradigm shifts right now. So like growing up, I'm 37. When I was growing up and got introduced to this, sport late, early teens, late, 10, whatever years old. I've since, from my earliest memories, it was always, I grew up in that time frame of like you release billfish. That was kind of like the norm. Let's call it the 2000s.
Shift.
That shift had already gone from the days before me where, guys were whacking a lot of things in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where, before the 90s when it started to kind of take that shift. And I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but I feel like it's almost starting to, like that pendulum's starting to swing back the other way. And I'm seeing more and more people, not being as afraid to necessarily post or to hang a fish and they aren't as afraid of being crucified by the community. And, I think it's somewhat of a good, I think it kind of almost went a little, personally, I think the conservation movement was needed to kind of break people out of that mentality of like, just kill everything.
Like I was talking about with the dolphin fish and so on, it changed in a good way.
But, I think
there needs to be balance.
Yeah, a balance of it. But other than that, I mean, that's just my personal observation. I think that I've witnessed that it's starting to kind of get back to like, okay, we're not going to, taking a fish every now and then for a tournament or for a world record. There's no need to like chastise that person. You know what I mean? But what other things have you seen? I mean, not only from the fishing side, but tackle side. I mean, you've been in the tackle industry now for almost 20 years, right? At RNR, you said early 2000s, so 20 some years.
Yeah.
What are some of the big things that you've seen as far as shifts in the culture of the sport or things like that?
So it's a very hot topic, but my position on harvesting fish is if you really want to talk about the source of the greatest harvest, it is not sport fishermen.
Right.
Go visit one of the harbors in China and Korea and many places, Spain, Italy. There's a lot of places, but especially in Asian countries. I've fished with a guy named John on the Rick Hendrick's boat. He was the engineer, and he was involved with LP in the early days. And he was the guy that would go to these harbors and bring equipment and train them how to longline, right? And he told me, one harbor, I can't remember the name of it, it was in an Asian country. It had over 100 commercial longline boats of 75 feet or longer. So think about that. What is it? Here's the math. Talk about the value of math. How many fish do you have to kill to support an 80-foot commercial boat and their crew and the maintenance needs?
Right.
And it goes back to math, right? You got to catch X before you break even. Everything above X is profit. What we do, even collectively, is a small dent compared to the collision that longlining has in other countries that are unregulated.
Right.
Compared to what all the sport fishermen around the world do in terms of harvest levels.
Right.
And by the way, when a fish is dead on the long line and they cut the hook because they don't want the marlin, they're not going to support the space that it takes to ice that marlin. It's still a dead marlin.
Right.
And worse, it was not harvested and put to use.
Right.
I've killed a fair amount of marlin in my life. Every one of them got filleted and eaten. And that just was a basic rule in my dad's house. And I'm so happy about that.
Yep.
Because I think that at the end of the day, what separates a wahoo from a marlin? If you harvest a wahoo, you eat it. Nobody's ever going to lambaste you for killing a wahoo.
True.
But you kill a marlin, and you've really committed a crime in many people's eyes. And listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And 100%, if they don't want to kill a marlin, don't kill that marlin or a sailfish or whatever. But I personally understand the volume of fish that gets harvested by other sectors. If you want to fight a battle, fight for international regulation. And I know that's almost impossible to accomplish.
Right.
But I'm just saying, if you were going to put your emotion into really benefiting the world's population of fish, you have to look at it internationally. The regulations that we have in the United States, I mean, think about this. Our longline fleets use circle hooks. Let's just start there.
Very clean, or I say very clean.
By the way, mostly in the corner of the jaw, if they cut one loose, he vast majority of the time lives, right? You go to longline fleets elsewhere, and it's a big offset tuna hook. They want it in the gut. Why? Right. Because the fish doesn't pull as hard. I mean, he will initially, but they quickly expire.
Right.
And when they expire, they hang. And it's just, think about it. Managing, you got to think about it on an industrial level.
Right.
Managing dead fish is way easier. Yeah.
You save like a couple, we'll call it a couple minutes per fish.
Maybe even a few fingers.
Yeah, a few fingers, it adds up though, like
right.
on that scale.
They want to kill the fish. I mean, or at least, it makes sense that a dead fish is an easy fish to make a decision on. Right. Cut, keep, whatever. And I mean, I get it. I'm sure that there are some stewards even in other countries. I don't mean to paint with a broad stroke that every foreign country's longline fleet is horrific.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Right.
But I can tell you there are pockets that are really bad. And there are, in general, less regulations than we have in the United States. So that's really my point, is that I believe the United States has gone very far towards being better stewards of the resource. And at the end of the day, if you're fishing in a sport boat and you catch a fish that either is going to die or you want to harvest, and it's legal to harvest. Let's focus on that. Legal
right.
to harvest. There's a reason. I've sat on many of the, fishery boards over the years, and there's a quantity of, there's an assessment of what we think is a sustainable harvest level, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as we stay in that level, we're not paving the cornfield. We're just harvesting the corn. Remember that.
Right. Very true.
It's renewable.
Yep. It's a resource. If managed correctly, it's
We're
sustainable.
not paving the cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to talk about how to think positively long-term, protect the bait. That's one thing Tim Choate did with Wild Oceans that I really appreciated.
Yeah.
They focus much on protection of the bait. Because at the end of the day, let's just say you had a tilapia pond.
Mm-hmm.
How big are those tilapia going to get? How fast?
Depends on how much you feed them and how much space they have.
Space and food. Yep. We got plenty of space. You got to protect the food. What makes Canada such a good tuna fishery? Pretty strict. Yeah. Pretty strict harvest rules.
Mm-hmm.
Very strict harvest rules, as a matter of fact. And enormous protection on bait. I mean, I've fished Canada a couple times, bluefin fishing.
Yeah. And
anywhere almost, I don't recall dropping a sabiki to the bottom ever and not catching a tinker mackerel.
Right.
Or a herring, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Coming from Miami where you're like, oh, there's some sardines, run. And, you catch a couple or, wow, I got 2 threads. No, you can't do it now. So back to regulations. Years ago, I could take an 8-hook squid rig and catch 8 mackerel at a shot. And I learned to be even quicker. You hold the lead and the rod and you push the rod forward and yank it hard back and all 8 mackerel would fall off, drop. So imagine the efficiency. It goes back to commercial fishing, right? And, I'd bring them up, shake them off, drop, bring them up, shake them off. And we were cutting them up for chunks and putting the big ones in the tank. And now it's 4 hooks max. But, man, their fishery is strong.
Yeah.
So you got to look at what's different. I got reasonable, harvest levels of bait and target fish, game fish.
Right.
And so there's my balancing act, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are other people that are, and I'm not making excuses for sport boats to go out and just slaughter fish.
Sure.
Not at all. But I am saying, let's be reasonable here and realize that as long as the resource is being used wisely, let's not lambaste somebody because they want to harvest something to eat, or maybe it's a notable catch, or, a record or somebody's first whatever. And I get it. You want to teach young people how to be conservation minded 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it should be a crime to take something that's renewable.
No.
That's the point.
No, in my opinion, I think it's one of those things. If it's being done legally, like you said, and laws outlined by, ideally people that know what's best for the resource. And if it's done legally, then I think it really boils down to the people using their best judgment and their best ethics, like you're talking about, what you were raised with. And unfortunately, not everyone's raised the same way. So you may think differently than someone else, but if it's done within the confines of the law, I feel like you can't really over chastise too much, whether you're on either side of it, that's just my opinion. I mean, I think, and the question always comes up like, oh, well, you had a grander next to the boat, would you kill it or not? I would like to think, I say I would, because I feel like that's such an achievement. And like we were talking about, like to get to see one in your lifetime is such an achievement. Whereas, you got guys like Peter Wright, who's, actually confirmed 77 or whatever the number is. Yeah. Like that. I would love to even, think of that. But, and also I feel like everything's so situational a lot of times with fishing. It depends on, how the fit, there'd be a lot of factors that would weigh into my final decision. So that's the thing. I don't know what I would do, but it's kind of like a game time decision, but I don't have any strong feelings like one way or another. People are like, oh yeah, I would 100% take it, or I would 100% release it. I don't know. Yeah. I think it would have to really be a game time decision for me.
Years ago, I've spent some time with Vinny Montello talking about his long line days. And he followed the fish through the Caribbean and into the Pacific. And I said, man, how many granders do you think you caught? He goes, I mean, there were times when we'd have them on the leader and they'd hit the boat, and it was a 100-foot steel vessel on the boat. You'd feel the boat shake. Because there were a lot of big ones. And, some of them were dead, some of them were alive. And back to my point, those boats are fishing 7 days a week, 24 hours a day while they're at sea. And how many just sink to the bottom of the ocean?
Right.
So let's not get too emotional about one guy kills one grander. And it's the greatest thing that ever happens. And by the way, I have a dentist I go to, and he and his brother killed a grander in Hawaii. And I mean, that picture is front and center. And let's not forget, this is really important. Stewardship. If you guilt somebody because they were doing something that was legal and wholesome, and suddenly they stop fishing, what have we really accomplished?
Right.
You've taken someone that could be a steward and a real caretaker that contributes time and money towards bettering and perpetuating and teaching others how to fish. And I mean, that's what charter business is about. I can't tell you how many people, started out chartering a boat, and pretty soon they're traveling the world on their big boat. But Bill Harrison tells the story of Jim Lambert. In the 70s, Bill remember I said he'd run boats for people and then come home and commercial fish. And he was, I think Newt Belcher had a boat called the Balama, and he was chartering it down there. And back then they were selling a lot of mounts, and they'd kill every blue marlin that somebody wanted to mount. He told me Jim Lambert's first day of blue marlin fishing was chartering him. This is what he remembers as far as he knew. It was his first day of fishing, and he had some customers on board. And he was a very successful businessman, and they caught a blue marlin, and Jim decided he was going to have it mounted for that customer. And then they got another one, and Jim said, you know what, we're going to mount that one too. And they caught another one. They caught 5. Bill came in with 5 dead blue marlin on the deck of the boat. And let's take for a minute and reflect on what Jim Lambert did to the world of sport fishing. It started with 5 dead blue marlin. So listen, I'm probably going to catch some heat for telling that story, but I'm just telling the truth. Don't shoot the messenger.
Right.
Jim Lambert turned out to own one of the greatest operations, the Reel Tight.
Yep.
And I remember being on his boat years later, when they're reviewing film at night, and look at, this long list of crew that came out of, Eric Leach, Fly Navarro. Yeah. I mean, the list is lengthy. Guys that came out of that operation. Joe, I mean, there's just a ton of guys that fished, of course, Eddie Herbert, these are all really great fishermen in their own right who also became stewards. So think about that.
Right.
Look at all the good people that Jim Lambert ended up creating through his operation.
True.
So that's my whole point here. I'm not saying go kill the marlin. I'm saying understand that there should be a balanced view in a proper way, in an acceptable way to enjoy the resource. I remember the last blue marlin I killed in Bermuda. I'm an outdoorsman. I eat stuff. And I wanted to get some of the fish. We caught it late in the day. I knew the meat's great. And I go there. They hold the fish right off the edge of the seawall. And I just start peeling skin. And I got my garbage bag in my grocery cart. And, I'm cutting quarters out, right? Next thing I know, I see a lady walk up and she's got a grocery bag, right? And I cut a chunk. And next thing you know, there's 3. Whoa. People are running around getting grocery bags.
Yeah.
And when that thing was done, it was a core.
Yep.
And I'll never forget that. It made me feel so good for days. I was fishing with Curly. He was a resident there, a local charter captain. And I'd be hanging out with Curly, go to the grocery store, and some woman would come up to me and, thank Curly and I for the fish. And you realize fundamentally that's what fishing should be.
Yes.
It's a way that the ocean can feed the land. When I was in Cape Verde, one of the highlights of Cape Verde was my traveling day at the end, leaving midday. So I went to the fish market. There is not one grain of ice on any of the fish in this building. And yet people are just carrying fish out the door left and right.
Right.
And I mean, it was a lot of fish. I think it's a pretty big commercial fleet there. And teaches you a lot of things. One, what a gift the sea is to us. And for that reason, we do want to be good stewards. But also enjoy the bounty and realize there's so much good that comes out of catching and consuming. And the last thing that I thought was pretty cool is I fished a lot of places, Costa Rica and different places where they don't have a speck of ice on the boat, and yet we eat the fish for dinner. Fish is a lot more durable as long as it's eaten in the short term than people realize. Like, we brine all our fish, and customers will say, "Hey, do you think I can get some of that home? Can we box it up and you get some dry ice and you could overnight it?" And I go, all you got to do is wrap it in paper towels. We brine it,
Right.
bleed it, so the meat's doesn't even have blood in it really. Wrap it in papers, put it in a bag, maybe a double bag, put it in the middle of your clothes. How much insulation does an ice chest have? 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch, right? A normal cooler. If you cut it, it's not that much foam. You got a bag full of clothes there. Put that dry bag of fish that's cold in the middle of it, and 6, 8, 10 hours later, and you get home, it's still going to be cold.
Right.
And if you can eat fish off the floor in Cape Verde in that fish market, nothing you eat, you could leave it in your suitcase for a day and eat it, and you'll still be better off.
Who knows how long it's been on the boat before it got to the market too,
So all those travels, we talk about hunting around the country. Everywhere I go, I take seafood. And then almost always, and then everywhere, hopefully when I come back, I got some duck or venison or something, right? So it's got to be 100 flights that I've traveled with meat. Never once have I had to throw it out. It was always cold. So that whole overnight shipping thing,
right.
UPS can be mad at me, but it's not necessary.
Right.
But whatever. It ties to what we're talking about. I appreciate the ocean and all the bounty. It's amazing. I fortunately love to eat fish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about the ocean, talking about the sport and everything, and what do you, wrap up here. But what, 2 kind of final questions. What has this sport, what has the ocean meant to you? Sport fishing has meant to you. That's the first question. The second one is, and I don't want to, rush these questions, but the second one is what's next for you? Because you're at a unique point in your life right now for the first time in a couple of years or many years when we're sitting here in your beautiful house, and you had mentioned that you just shipped your kids off to college. You're both at UF now, and so you got an empty house here. And so, I want to know what that looks like for you with that responsibility of being a dad. I mean, that's never going to end, obviously, but the formative years where you're responsible for raising these kids. now that you got a little bit more free time on your hands, what does the career look like for Ray Rosher? So first one is, what has this sport meant to you? And then second, like, what's next?
Well, I feel like the luckiest man alive. I got to go down a road that I only dreamed of when I was a kid. First sailfish, you just never forget that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the tough part right now. I'm sorry to get emotional, but the flood of memories, the people, many of them gone. Those are great, great memories. Great people. We just lost Harry Shufflebarger a few days ago. HT Hook and John Still, an old friend of my dad. I got my first sailfish with, my first deer, my first gobbler, and he's gone. That's the flood.
Yeah.
Now you understand the gift.
The people, the people that you've met along the way, the relationships built. I mean,
all I can say is appreciate the people today while they're with you. Because when they're gone, they're gone. Yeah. And that's the gift that the sea has brought to me.
Mm. Yeah.
That's it.
That's pretty profound.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
And it's been the greatest life. And I just hope my kids and the next generation and all the young people on the boat can enjoy that.
Well, I mean, you're not done. You say it's been a great life. I still think, man, I mean, like I said earlier, you look fantastic. I mean, you're in great shape. You just came back from fishing hard for 3 or 4 weeks. And, you got some idle time on your hands. And I think that's dangerous in a good way, like with you, having some more time to focus on.
I got to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's,
I don't know about that.
That's kind of scary if I was, some of these tournament guys out there, especially if you're, you got a little bit more time, you're going to be bouncing around and spending some more time abroad. That's pretty cool. It's exciting.
Have pliers will travel. So if somebody wants to go do something fun, I could be dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ray, I want to say thank you, not only for taking the time for doing this with us and doing this podcast, but also for everything you've done for the sport. You've been a hell of a steward. Talk about being a steward. Talk about being an ambassador. I mean, I know you've, anytime I've ever asked you, whether it's at Marlin or when I was at IGFA, if you can help with anything, it's always been like, let me know when. So thank you. And,
thanks for enduring the stories.
Anytime, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.